My name is Mina, and on the morning I learned a bank thought I owed them $42,000, I was 3 minutes late to work because a sparrow refused to hop off my car's side mirror. It was barely 7. The kitchen window was a rectangle of weak January light, and the apartment smelled like dish soap and yesterday's garlic. I had my travel mug in one hand and my phone in the other, the notification banner burning a small hole in my stomach. Payment overdue, the email preview said. Immediate response required. The sender, Northlake Bank. I don't have an account at Northlake Bank, I thought. Then the sparrow tapped its beak against its reflection, once, twice, the sound sharp as a fingernail against glass, and when it finally flitted away, I sat down at the table because my knees had gone soft. The laminate was cold and tacky. I opened the email. Dear Ms. Patel, thank you for choosing Northlake Bank for your personal loan needs. This is a reminder that your payment due December 1st has not been received. I read it twice, as if the second reading would reveal the punchline. $42,072.14. I scrolled. There was an attached PDF with my name and my old address, a monthly payment number that made my throat close up, and a tidy line of loan purpose, debt consolidation. I said out loud, because the apartment was quiet and being quiet suddenly felt like choking. What is this? From the bedroom, Jordan yelled. You say something? Jordan, my husband of 18 months, always sounded like he was at the bottom of a stairwell when he yelled back. The angles of our place swallowed him. He'd been laid off from the warehouse in June and strung together deliveries and a couple shifts at his cousin's electronics shop, and during the day the bed hulled him like a boat. He'd always been a good sleeper. He could nap on a train, on the couch, in a chair with the sun in his eyes. You got something from Northlake Bank? I asked, standing in the doorway. Jordan was a lump under the duvet, hair smashed flat on one side. He squinted. Northlake Bank. They think I took out a loan, I said. They say I owe them a lot of money. He pushed up onto his elbows. In your name? Yes, I said. Must be a scam. He was already rolling back onto his stomach, face turned away. My aunt got one last month. They make up debts. Don't click links. The email had my old address, my birthday, the last 4 digits of my social security number. The customer care phone number had that sheen of officialness you don't want to trust, but do because you don't want to imagine the world being that cruel. My tongue tasted like a penny. Will you look at it? I asked. Just so I don't feel crazy. He groaned and reached for his phone. Send it. In the doorway, I forwarded him the email. Jordan's phone pinged, and he rubbed his eyes and tapped. Looks like spam, he said after a minute, voice fresh with certainty. Who signs a letter with warmly customer support? It's fake. He tossed his phone to the nightstand. Don't worry, okay? That's the thing about trust. The early years with Jordan had been training my body to relax when he said, don't worry. He'd gotten me home safely when I was drunk at 22. He'd fixed the alternator on my battered Honda with YouTube and 2 borrowed tools. He remembered my favorite cheap ramen brand. He'd held me when my mother called to say my grandmother had collapsed in the garden and was gone. I'm already late, I said, and I kissed his shoulder, a gesture as automatic as putting my keys in the bowl, and left for work. I teach preschool at Bright Steps, a room full of small humans whose daily mission is to fling glitter into the air, and then somehow into my hair, my clothes, my soul. I'm 26 and one of the youngest teachers there, which means I still say things like, outside voice, and actually mean it. On my break, while the other teachers debated the relative merits of different brands of baby wipes, I called the number in the email. It wasn't that I didn't believe Jordan. It was that I believed the part of myself that wanted to sleep that night. A woman with a practiced, kind voice answered. Northlake Bank, this is Letitia. How can I help you? I said, I got an email about a loan. I never took out a loan. Let me look up your account, she said, and asked for my name and birthday and the last 4 of my SSN. The pause that followed was something I felt more than heard, my body bracing for a judgment. It looks like, she said carefully, a $42,000 personal loan was approved in August last year. Payments began in September. A payment was missed in December. Are you saying you didn't authorize this loan, Ms. Patel? The classroom walls seemed to tilt. August last year. 2 months after the wedding, when the cracks in everything were politely rolled into the corners and hidden under the rug. I did not, I said. My voice was steady, a miracle. How did this happen? I can't say yet, Letitia said. But we take identity theft very seriously. We'll open a case. I'll email you a checklist. We'll need a copy of your ID, a signed affidavit, and any documentation you might have that shows who actually applied. We can also put a note on your account and place a hold on collection activity until we investigate. Thank you, I said, and hung up because my eyes had filled, and this wasn't a moment I wanted to narrate into a headset. I took the class outside. I watched them line leaves up along the edge of the sandbox like they were laying out gold. August. 42,000. Debt consolidation. I could see the shape of this thing, not its details, the way you can tell a stranger is in your house from the way the air feels before you see anyone. When I got home that night, Jordan had cooked. He had the pan with the weird wobble on the stove, and a sloppy pile of scrambled eggs in it, and a package of tortilla wraps open on the counter. He grinned and popped a piece of egg in my mouth like he was feeding a baby bird. How was your day? He asked. The hellions behave? That bank called it a loan, I said, trying to find a landing strip for the words. Not spam. They send a checklist. They want me to file an affidavit. He went still in a practiced way. I'd seen him do the same thing when we drove past a police car, or when his cousin asked for a loan. It was like a deer freezing because stillness could equal invisibility. His face smoothed out. Huh, he said. Weird. I held up my phone. It says the application was done online in August. 2 pay stubs were provided. The account was funded the next day. His eyelids flickered. And I looked at him. People think catching a lie is about hearing a wrong note in the music. For me, it's about silence. There was so much of it thickening the room, I wanted to punch through it. This is the part, I said slowly, where you tell me you did it. He laughed. It came out high and thin. What? Mina, no. Why would I do that? In your name. Because my credit was better than yours, I said, and I watched the laughter die in his throat like the flame on a match when you shake it too hard. The pan hissed. He turned back to the stove and scraped eggs like they needed to be punished. You're being paranoid. Show me your credit report, I said. The sentence surprised us both. No, he said immediately. Then he seemed to realize how fast he'd said it, because he added, not because there's anything there. Private as a moldy cup on the coffee table. It's not a $40,000 loan. He took the pan off the burner. He put the eggs on a plate. He took a bite standing there and chewed like the act could save him. We're okay, Mina, he said after he swallowed. He reached for my wrist. His fingertips were slick with butter. We're okay. I'm not, I said, and the thread of quiet in me snapped. I'm not okay. Did you put a loan in my name? He stared at me, and under the stare there was the man who had met me at a party with gold balloons and a broken couch and said, You look like you hate everyone here. There was the man who had held my hand so fiercely my knuckles ached when the hospital called my mother back to work after her break. There was the man who had said, We're a team, when we felt the first tremor of money trouble. I did, he said. It was so soft I almost thought I imagined it. He didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at a spot on the stove like it might tell him what to do next. I did, but it was for us. I thought I'd get back to work sooner. He swallowed. I was going to tell you when it was paid down, and you'd never have to carry it. I'm sorry, Mina. I'm so sorry. I could feel my heart, a hard fist knocking. You forged my signature. It was all online. He winced. I mean, they have your e-doc. And you used my credit. We're married, he said. The last word sounded like a life raft he was paddling toward. It's ours. Not like that, I said. I felt sharp. It was new, it was terrifyingly clear. I had never in my life felt so young and so old at the same time. You don't invade your ours like a thief at night. His mouth opened and shut, the automatic motion of a fish put on sand. I thought I could fix it, he whispered. I thought you were a person who wouldn't do this, I said, and I walked into the bedroom because if I stayed I would start throwing things. The checklist from Northlake sat on my phone like a to-do list for a person I had never wanted to become. Copy of ID. Signed affidavit. Police report number if available. Any documents, photos, communications that would indicate the identity of the applicant. There was an asterisk by the line that said that if I suspected the person who took the loan was known to me, additional documentation might include proof of their income and employment at the time of application. On the bank's website, on a page that was trying so hard to be friendly it made me want to bite it, there was a scenario about familiar fraud. It said a not insignificant percentage of identity theft was committed by people the victim knew. Family, friends, caregivers, partners. The phrase sat in my mouth like a pebble, familiar fraud. I opened our junk drawer and found a stack of things that felt like props for a play. Birth certificates, a marriage license, a fat rubber band, a roll of tape that had given up the will to live. Under it all was an accordion folder I had once, in an airy fit of adulthood, labeled records. I had put copies of our Paystubs there the year we combined health insurance. The folder breathed paper dust when I opened it. I took out my papers, then Jordan's. His Paystubs were from last summer, in August, brutal proof of 6-day weeks at the warehouse. His name, his address, the exact $824.10 weekly net pay he'd been proud of. My fingers trembled as I slid them back into the folder. The page from the bank's portal had the exact amounts the applicant had provided in August. I stood there for a long time. In the living room, Jordan turned on the TV and pretended to watch a reality show where people yelled at each other about whose outfit was better. In the bedroom, I took a slow breath. I photographed the Paystubs. I scanned my ID. I filled out the affidavit. Under the line that asked, "Do you know who may have opened this account?" I printed in neat teacher letters. My husband, Jordan Carr. You learn early, if you grew up with immigrant parents, that you don't make cops your business unless your house is on fire and the whole block sees the smoke. I watched the cursor blink where the portal wanted a police report number. I closed my eyes. The next day, on my lunch break, I called the non-emergency line. The officer took down my story, his voice flat. "This is pretty common," he said, and I felt the doom of the ordinary settle over me. He gave me a case number. I sent the bank everything. The affidavit. My ID. Screenshots of my credit report showing the sudden unsecured loan. Jordan's Paystubs from August. I wrote a cover letter, though the portal didn't ask for one, because I'm a teacher and I don't like sending kids home without notes. I wrote, "I did not apply for this loan. I did not authorize it. I have reason to believe my husband used my information without my consent. He had access to my personal documents. He had the motive. He had the means. I have attached his Paystubs from the period in question, which were used as income verification. I can provide further information upon request." When I clicked submit, my finger hovered. I thought of Jordan asleep, his mouth open. I thought of the sparrow on the mirror. Then I clicked. The portal spun a little circle, and then it was done. That night Jordan was in performative innocence mode. He brought home flowers from the corner grocery. Carnations dyed a color that didn't exist in nature. He made jokes that ate their own tails. He touched me like an apology. "It's being processed," I told him when he asked. "Okay," he said, and he nodded as if I had told him the weather. If love is a muscle, there is a moment when you feel it tear. It's microscopic but decisive. In movies they make it a slammed door, a shouted name, a suitcase packed in a single angry sweep. In my kitchen it was me tipping the flowers into a vase and watching the dyed water creep up the stems. I felt the tear, and the ache, and the empty space behind it that I might someday fill with something else. The bank called 3 days later. "This is Letitia," she said. "First, I'm sorry this happened to you, Ms. Patel." I sat on the edge of the teacher's bathroom sink with the door locked and my heart banging. "Thank you for calling. We've reviewed your documentation," she said. "We've compared it to the application details. The income verification the applicant provided matches the Paystubs you supplied for your husband. The IP address used for the application resolves to your home address. The sink was cool against my thighs. What does this mean? I asked. Am I free? It means we will consider this account fraudulent with respect to you, she said. We will remove the trade line from your credit report and report the identity theft to the credit bureaus. We will also refer the matter for further review regarding the applicant. If this was your husband, he may see a new account on his credit report in his name, and any delinquency will be reported there. We will send letters to confirm these actions. It may take 30 to 60 days to fully clear from your report, but the collection activity will stop. Okay, I said. The word came out on a prayer. Letitia's voice softened. Do you have support, Ms. Patel? I have a friend, I said. After we hung up, I stood in the bathroom and watched my face be a stranger's. I washed it, the way my mother washes her hands after cutting onions, to rid myself of something sticky and invisible. Then I went back to class and led circle time, and when Ashlyn told me her tooth was wiggly, I said, "That means you're growing." And I meant it. Jordan's credit did not crash like a crashing wave, a single violent event. It went down like a curtain, rung by rung. The first sign was a tightness around his eyes when he looked at his phone, and then the second was him rearranging my mail on the table like a dog burying a bone. The third was the way he came up behind me when I was making tea and pressed his face into my hair and said, "I love you," with a hunger that let me know he was starving. A week after the bank call, a collection letter arrived. "Dear Mr. Carr, we are writing to inform you." Jordan read it at the counter with one hand on either side of the page like he might bend it into something else. He looked at me. He smiled like a wolf showing its teeth is a smile. "What did you do?" I dried my hands on a kitchen towel. "I reported the fraud," I said. "I sent the bank your paystubs. They moved the loan to your name. That's all. That's all." The laugh that came out of him sounded like a bucket dropped down a well. "You crashed my credit. You hurt me," I said quietly. "I stopped the hurt." "We're married," he said again, and this time the word glittered with acid. "You killed us." "No," I said. "You made a copy of me and handed that copy to a bank and asked them to believe in her more than me. You did that." "I only told the truth about it. I slept on the couch." It wasn't a decision so much as a map I found in my pocket and followed. The next morning I packed a duffel with enough clothes to make a week feel like a possibility and went to Danny's. Danny is the friend you make at 19 because you like the same dumb coffee shop. And at 29 she is the friend who has a spare toothbrush in her cabinet with your name on the wrapper. We met in our dorm when I thought I had lost my student ID and she discovered it under my laptop. She has a voice that can scold a cat into returning a pen, and a laugh that makes strangers help you move. "I knew he wasn't right," she said when I told her the bones of the story. "I don't like to say it because it makes me sound like a witch, but I knew." Danny's apartment was above a laundromat. The nights there vibrated with quarter-fed machines and the warm breath of steam, and somehow it made me feel less lonely, like the whole building was a chest rising and falling. I slept hard and dreamed my teeth fell out, and woke up relieved my mouth hurt only because I'd dead-chomped my own cheek. During the next weeks, I did all the things the checklists in the world said to do. I put fraud alerts on my credit files. I froze my credit. I called the FTC hotline with an administrative voice I did not know I possessed. I logged and photocopied and notified because I had learned that paperwork is a kind of magic if you work it with faith. And, because paperwork doesn't heal the bruise, I went to therapy. "Tell me about Happy," my therapist said in our third session. Her name was Olivia, and she had a plant in her office that was thriving in a way that, at first, made me resent it and then slowly comforted me. I told her about the first time Jordan and I danced in a kitchen, so small our elbows knocked the cabinets. I told her about how my father had asked him, gently, if he knew the difference between being charming and being kind, and Jordan had, equally gently, said he did. I told her about the day we got married in a city park, and his cousins brought a speaker that kept glitching, so our first dance was fits and starts and joy anyway. I told her about the months after, when money felt like a low thunder in the distance. "And now?" she asked, scribbling something in her notes. "Now the thunder is overhead," I said. "And I'm in a different house. Younger me would call you a narc." Jordan texted me a week after I moved out. "Couldn't even write it out, huh?" "I won't be insulted into silence," I typed, fingers trembling. Then, because not replying never made him go away, I put my phone face down and went to make tea. He blocked and unblocked me 3 times in one day. He put a photo on Instagram of himself on a borrowed motorcycle, the cheap kind with the loud engine that made me itchy. His caption, "We fall, we rise." He posted a poem and a story about betrayal, and how it always comes from those closest. Then he messaged me, "You're not above this, you know. It's still your debt. We're married." I screenshot. I breathed. I put the phone in a drawer. I told Danny, and she rolled her eyes so hard the cat flinched. The bank sent me a letter, real paper, folded, with my name printed in that formal, incorrect way that makes you feel both seen and unmapped. It confirmed what Letitia had said. The trade line was removed from my report, the balance and delinquencies would no longer affect my score, and they had corrected their records to reflect the identity theft. It told me to hang on to it like a talisman. I showed it to my parents over dal and rice at their table, and my mother inhaled like someone who had been underwater too long. My father folded his glasses, put them in his pocket, and looked at me as if I had come back from a far country. "You did this," he said, and there was pride in it, and the complicated ache of watching your kid do something that reshapes them. "I had help," I said, because I needed the grace of remembering that. Jordan's credit went down. He called once, and the roar in his voice wasn't about love, it was about loss, about how a number on a screen could determine whether a landlord handed you a key. "I can't even get a decent phone plan," he said, furious. "You broke me." "I took back what was mine," I said, and hung up because I could feel the words curdle. He started sending me screenshots of forums where men complained about crazy wives. He found a Reddit thread and sent it to me with the caption, "Sound familiar?" And for a second the old instinct rose, the desire to smooth, to explain, to outlogic the mean thing. I put my phone on airplane mode and went outside and watched the winter sky turn the color of a bruise, and I said the truth out loud, a small prayer to no one. I am allowed to protect myself. In March, I moved into an apartment with counters I picked, and a landlord who looked me in the eye and said the rent without apologies. Danny and her girlfriend, Kat, helped me carry boxes up the narrow stairs. We leaned my mattress against the wall, and it slid and landed like a seal flopping, and we laughed until my ribs hurt. The place had windows that faced the street, and a back room that could be an office or an art studio, or a space where I put plants I could not keep alive. I bought a bright yellow kettle, and a cheap rug with a pattern like a heartbeat. The first night, I lay on the floor and listened to the city move. A bus sighing, a couple arguing about the best taco truck, a dog period sighing like it had paid taxes all day. Jordan sent a final message that said, "Do you feel better?" And I typed and deleted 3 versions of yes, before I realized what I wanted wasn't to answer him but to answer myself. I wrote in my notebook, because I had started keeping one, because papers that aren't official still matter. "I don't feel better yet. I feel truer. I will take true." I filed for legal separation, and in the courthouse I saw people who looked tired and people who looked newly sharp, and I realized I was one of the latter. The clerk at the window wore nail polish the color of a ripe eggplant and said, "You're doing the right thing." And I almost cried because strangers shouldn't have that power, and yet sometimes they do. When my credit report updated, an unceremonious email, a graph that ticked up by points that, to a younger me, would have sounded trivial but now felt like inches of air. I went and bought myself a plant. It was a snake plant, because the internet said those are difficult to kill. I named it Patience. It lived. It grew a little bit. When I watered it, I watered the dry outer rim of myself, too. I watched his credit crash. I say it like that because the watching was part of the story. Not literally, I didn't have a dashboard with a little car skidding. Though sometimes the apps made it feel like that, like you could measure misery by a dial. I mean, I watched the consequences unspool, and I did not step in. That's the part that changes you. Not the initial no, but all the tiny no's after. No to picking up the phone when it would have been easier to say, it's okay. No to letting your mother's friend tell you, men are like that. No to the spiky little voice inside your chest that whispers, what if this was your fault somehow? Because opinions are loud, but shame is louder. In April, a box arrived from Jordan's cousin's shop. It held a few of my things, books he didn't want, a sweater, the glass mug with the chip. No note. It was both generous and an insult. I put the mug in the back of a cabinet and told the part of myself that collects symbols to take the day off. In May, I got a raise. It was small, but it felt like a yes tucked into my pocket. A new kid at Bright Steps, Elijah, had a stutter, and I sat with him every morning for 3 weeks and taught him to sing the syllables. When he said yellow all at once, his whole face lit like the kettle on my stove. I took that home with me like a trophy. I started visiting my parents more. I let my mother feed me in the way she loves best. My father taught me how to do the oil change on the Honda with a patience that was almost slow joy. He said, you can do things yourself, and I heard the second sentence inside it. You always could. One afternoon, I went for a walk along the river. The city was a shiver of spring. Teenagers in puffy coats without the zippers zipped, dogs losing their minds over sticks, old men sitting on benches with their faces turned up like houseplants finding the light. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Later I listened, expecting some new creditor, some voice that would tighten my chest. It was Letitia from Northlake. Ms. Patel, she said. I'm calling to let you know we've closed out your case. We have updated the bureaus. The account will not appear on your reports. We're sorry this occurred. If you need anything else, you can reach out. I hope you're well. I stood there with the river flinging light like confetti and felt like I had graduated from something no one would ever frame a certificate for. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't need proof. I lived in the proof. Jordan married me because we were young and messy, and the world dared us to be a team. He hurt me because he was scared and the template for being a man he'd been handed was brittle and greedily cheap. There are 100 explanations. Explanations are plentiful in a way truth isn't. The truth is I loved him, and he used my name to build a house he couldn't pay for. And when the bill came, I decided not to live there anymore. People say revenge and mean a specific flavor of satisfaction. Public, loud, a door slamming with the thunk of the last word. What I learned was quieter. It was a steady practice of choosing deliberately the life where my name is only ever mine. It was knowing I could have stayed and he would have said he would fix it and maybe he would have, and then maybe the next time it would be a smaller lie because small lies like to breed, and maybe I would have smiled at parties with my arms folded close to keep the pieces in. It was saying, no, and then living in the space no makes. A year later, Jordan texted me by accident or on purpose. It said, hope you're good. The little ellipsis appeared and disappeared 3 times like a ghost hiccuping. I didn't reply. I didn't block him either. It felt like a ritual to leave alone. When I tell this story now, when I tell it to new friends over wine in my apartment with the bad rug and the plants that are learning to forgive me, I say, he took out a loan in my name. And they make the face you make when you bite a pepper you thought was mild and discover it's not. I say, I sent the bank his pay stubs, and there is always one person who says, Jesus, with a complex admiration. I say, I watched his credit crash, because the phrase is both too dramatic and exactly right, because the first time I said it I was trying to make myself laugh and I couldn't, and later I could, and that felt like a small found freedom. I say, I'm a person who knows paperwork, and we laugh at that too. I got a postcard from Danny this summer, even though she lives 10 blocks away. It had a picture of a field with 2 blue cornflowers. She wrote, you did a hard thing. I see you. And I stuck it on my fridge with the magnet shaped like a lemon that we bought at a garage sale for 50 cents. Kat took a picture of me standing in front of the fridge, and I sent it to my mother, who replied with 17 heart emojis, one of which was black and which she must have chosen by accident, but which I liked. There is a second ending. It happens on a Tuesday in July. I am at work, and Elijah has graduated to saying yellow like it's a prize he is considering sharing with the world. And I get an email from the bank confirming, one last time, that my reports will reflect the corrected data indefinitely. I close the email and realize I haven't thought about the loan in days. The quiet that follows is not the same quiet as the one in the kitchen months ago when I asked if he had done it. This quiet is a meadow after rain, the kind you breathe and feel it do you good. On that day I walk home along the street where the sparrows thread their way around cut power lines and flowering weeds, and I think about how young I still am and how old I sometimes feel, and how both things can be true and both things can be generous. I buy a plum from the corner grocer and eat it on the steps and let the juice run down my wrist, and do not apologize for the stain it leaves on my sleeve. Jordan is in the city somewhere, living a life in which his credit score went down for a while and maybe came up again. I do not need the details. My life is a yellow kettle singing, and a plant that doesn't die, and a child who learns to say a color, and parents who let me borrow a ladder, and a friend who will never tell me, "I told you so," even though she could. And if I ever doubt one day, when my snake plant has sent up a new stiff leaf, and I've bought for myself a thin gold ring, not because I need a ring but because I like how a glint of light looks when my hand moves, I will go on a date with a person who knows the difference between being charming and being kind. We will watch a sparrow land on the edge of a table, and we will stop speaking for 2 seconds because silence is also joy. I will tell him I'm good with paperwork. I will say, "Tell me the truth always," and he will say, "Of course," and I will say, "No, not of course, promise," and he will promise, and maybe it will be true. I don't have a moral that would fit on a poster with a scenic background. I have a folder in a drawer and a kettle on a stove and a plant on a windowsill and a body that is learning I can keep it. I have a name that's mine. I have a story that begins with a sparrow and a bank and ends with a life that is stubbornly my own. The end.